We are beings in motion. Something is always moving with us. Even when we're in a state of stillness, if we feel inside our heart is beating, our lungs are moving, our blood is flowing, something is always moving. And movement is a way that catches our attention. If you look around, I was looking out my window and I see a tree and the leaves are moving. Something catches our attention, something moves out of the corner of our eye, and we're there looking at it. So movement is a way of being alive, right? It's a way that we understand how we are navigating the world and having a relationship with the world. And movement, similar to breath and touch, can regulate and resource, or can activate and dysregulate us. And as we get ready to explore movement, what I'd like to invite you to do is when we come into a practice, we're going to first imagine the movement before we enact the movement. So as we imagine a movement, our motor cortex joins in the action with us, and we can feel the movement come alive. And sometimes imagining the movement is the right degree of challenge for us. And if we then bring the movement to life and enact the movement, it feels too overwhelming to our nervous system. I know for me, I often imagine the movement and get a lot of benefit out of imagining a movement. But when I bring it out into the world to actually enact it, it feels too challenging. So we want to begin to know ourselves as movers. And so I'm going to invite you first to reflect on these prompts. When I think about myself as a mover, and just notice, how do you fill that in? When I think about myself as a mover, as someone who's moving through the world, and then when I think of moving by myself, what happens? How do you fill that in? And then when I think of moving with others. So those are the three prompts to begin to think about. When I think about myself as a mover, when I think of moving by myself, and when I think of moving with others. We begin to get to know how our nervous systems respond. So now let's do a guided movement practice. And again, we're going to start by imagining the movement together and then enacting the movement. And with this guided practice, we can do hand movements, which is what I'm going to take you through. You can also do full body movements, right? Which I won't do for this, but I will invite you to do for yourself. And we're going to explore regulated actions, survival actions, moving through regulation, survival, and back again, and moving in the various ways we feel regulated. So let's start by exploring regulated movement actions. And I'm going to just do hand movements, and I'm going to imagine first, but I'm going to show you what I'm imagining. So I'm imagining a hand movement like this. So for you, imagine, just in your mind's eye, imagine a regulated hand movement, something that feels, oh, I'm anchoring in the safety of my nervous system. What is that movement? And imagine it happening. Feel your motor cortex coming alive and being with you in this action. And then, if it feels safe, bring it to life. And here's mine. This is my regulated action that helps me feel anchored in my system. Nice. So then, because we want to remember that sympathetic has a regulated experience as well, what's a sympathetic regulated experience where you're using the energy of your nervous system in a regulated way? And I'm going to imagine mine, and I'm going to show you what I'm imagining. This is my regulated sympathetic. It's just helping me bring energy. So imagine And then if it feels right, bring it to life out here. And let's do the same for dorsal, that system that's bringing nutrients to nourish us, running our digestion. We'll imagine and then enact. And what I'm imagining is a very subtle movement, very subtle pulse. So imagine what your movement is. Regulated digestion, nutrients. And then if it feels right, bring it to life out here. And you can notice the difference for yourself between imagining and enacting. And then you can notice the difference if you're alone enacting, and if you want to invite a friend or a family member or someone you work with to do this with you, what it might feel like to be seen in doing the movement. So those are regulated actions. Let's go to survival actions now. So that sympathetic for me was this, that nice regulated mobilizing energy. Let's bring that into a survival action. And again, we're first going to imagine and then enact. My survival action that I'm going to be imagining is this, right? I can feel it. So I'm going to imagine that and feel my system going there and then enact it. So for you, go ahead, imagine. What's your sympathetic survival action? And then if it feels safe and okay, bring it out into an action outside of your imagination. And then let's do the same for dorsal. The dorsal survival that takes us into collapse, disappear, no longer here. And my dorsal survival that I'm going to imagine. And again, we always want to have a tiny bit of movement, even though dorsal is often collapsed. A tiny bit. So this is my dorsal. But you can feel just the tiniest bit of movement. I don't know if you can see it. And again, heads down, not looking at you anymore. So that's dorsal for me. So I'm going to imagine it. And as I imagine it, I can feel it flooding me, and then I'm going to enact it. So the same for you. Imagine the dorsal disappear, despair, and then an action that enacts it. All right. So now what we really want to do is we want to move between these states, right? We don't want to be stuck in dorsal despair, sympathetic overwhelm. We really don't even want to always be in ventral safety. We want to be able to move down and up. So come back to your ventral, right? Come back to your ventral and imagine your ventral. And then move to your sympathetic in your mind's eye. And then move to your dorsal. And then come back up to sympathetic. And end back in ventral. Remember when we first started, we learned about the hierarchy and how it comes in a specific order. Ventral, sympathetic, dorsal. So that's what we're using now in this movement. We're moving down from ventral to sympathetic to dorsal, and then back up the hierarchy from sympathetic to ventral. So now you've imagined it. Now bring it to life out here. Right, here's my ventral, my sympathetic survival, my dorsal collapse, my sympathetic survival, my ventral. So what I would invite you to do is to move through your three states, down and back up the hierarchy, and take time with each so that you really get the flavor, and move to the next and then move back up. Because what you're helping your nervous system remember and what you're building inside your own system is the capacity to keep coming back to find safety in ventral, find safety in your nervous system. You can move to sympathetic survival or dorsal survival and come back and find safety in your nervous system. That's what we're not really teaching our nervous system, because I do believe our nervous system inherently knows how to do this, but we're reminding our nervous system, and we're using movement as a way to actively bring this to life, to experience it intentionally down and up. And so the last experience that I would like us to explore is moving within that safety and regulation of ventral. Right? There are a lot of flavors of ventral. Ventral is not simply being at ease. Right? Ventral, the safety in the nervous system is also playful and passionate and quiet and alert and interested and curious, all sorts of flavors. So what I really would like us to do is I started with this. That was one of my ventral movements, right? What are some others, right? There's this, there's this, there's this, there's this. So for you again, and you might, with ventral, sometimes we can move right to enacting, but again, start with imagining. Imagine all the different ways, and then enact. I love this one. I love the different flavors of ventral, moving with the different flavors, and in my imagination, these are I bring these into full body movements. I love the experience. I can see myself doing amazing full body movements. I have never been able to bring that into an enacted experience, because for me, when I bring movement from imagine to enact in more than a hand movement way, when it's more of a full body, my nervous system says no, thank you. Right, so it becomes too much of a challenge for me. So I spend a lot of time in the imagined place. I also get great joy out of watching others move. And I can feel my own system joining in the movement, even though I'm not actually doing it. So that's another way to experience the benefits of movement, and ways to find safety in our own experience by observing others. So again, take time with this experience of moving, and play with imagining and enacting regulated states, survival states, moving down and up, and then playing with all the flavors of that safety and regulation in ventral. And if it feels interesting to you, you might invite someone to join you in this, because again, system loves to be in connection with others. We gain from that. That may be something that works for you. And if you, like me, are someone for whom the imagining is the place where it feels you get the most nourishment and resourcing, enjoy that. Right? For years, I fought against that for myself, thinking that there's something wrong with me, that I should be able to do something different. And it took me a long time to really recognize the wisdom of my system, and to stop fighting against it and join with it, and really be able to enjoy movement in this way. So again, find the ways that your nervous system says, yes, that's it. And then dive into those.